In this example, we're going to review how you can schedule tests to be created automatically using the standard Business Central job queue functionality. In our example, we're going to create a simple 5S daily work center test, and we're going to schedule it to run every morning. Now, the first part that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we have a source configuration for the record that we want. There's a lot out of the box. In our example, we're going to create one for our work center. So to start off with, we're going to look for our quality source configuration. And then we're going to choose one. So we're going to create a new one for our work center. Our from table is going to be the work center table. So we're going to choose the standard Business Central work center table. In our example, all we're going to do is just map the work center number itself. And we're going to map that to be the document number on the test. Okay. So that allows us to use the work center as a record to create our tests. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a quality inspection test or a template that we want to use when we're creating these daily tests. So we're going to navigate to our quality inspection template. And we're going to create a new one. And we'll call this 5S example. 5S work center example. Okay, and we're not going to add all questions that you'd probably have on a 5S example, but what we'll do is we'll just say, we'll pick a few. Have unnecessary items in your workspace been removed? And we'll just say this as a yes and no. And let's add one more here. And we'll just say our tools materials and equipment arranged for a good workflow. Okay. And again, typically we'd have more options here, but we'll just use these two questions for now for our very simple work center test. Okay. So now we've got our questions that we want to ask. So now the next step is just to make a simple test generation rule for that work center. So what we're going to do is we're now going to choose work center, which now shows up because we've made that source configuration. And in our case, what you can do is you can have different tests for different work centers. And if you wanted to do that, then you would just simply configure the work center that you wanted for the template that you wanted for that work center. In our case, we want this to be used for all work centers involved. Okay, so now we've got a test generation rule for the work center. In our case, we're just saying we want this to apply to any work center that the test is created against. So it'll always choose this template. We've got a template that has two questions for the standard checklist. And we had a configuration where we're just allowing a test to be created on a work center. So let's review the code involved. It's really straightforward. So in our code, really all we need is we've just got a code unit, and it's just referencing the job queue entry. All right, so this is the standard pattern for any code unit that you're running inside of the job queue. In it, we're going to grab your work center, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the parameter string that's on the job queue entry to define which specific work center we want to use. We're going to get a record reference from it, and then we're simply going to use the create test that's part of this create test coding it. And that's it. So we're going to publish that coding it. And now that it's published, all we need to do is we're going to go to our job queue entries. We're going to create a new job queue entry. We're going to choose our code unit, and we're going to put in that code unit that we just created. Now, in my case, let's just see what work center we have. I've got some standard work centers from Corona, so I'm going to use 100. So I will just say that I want this to be coding at 100. And I want this to run every day on Tuesdays, and I want this to run at 7 a.m. Now, if I wanted to test this out, I would just choose run once in foreground. And then we can see that it actually created the test. Oh, and we see it made a different test because of how we've got it configured. So we're just going to navigate back to our quality inspector setup. And we're going to choose a few things. We are not going to use item tracking because that's all blank. So it's just going to find a blank item, which is why I pulled open a job queue one. So we're going to say always create a new test, and we're going to use standard source fields. So standard source fields will also require that it matches the document number as well. Okay, so we'll go back. We'll run it once again. We'll choose yes. And then we can see that it created our 5S example. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to schedule it to ready. And because we scheduled it for, in my case, today when I'm making the video for the earliest starting time, it'll probably run pretty immediately. And we can actually see that it already ran. So if we navigate to our log entries, we should be able to see that it created that test and it ran successfully. So now if we navigate to our quality tests, we'll now see the first one that we created manually, and then we'll see another one that we created automatically with the job queue. All right, so that is how you can create a test for work center, such as a 5S test, end-to-end. This is all the configuration you need, and the very minimal code you need to do something like this. All right, so again, this was a relatively simple example. You could get more complex, and you could have more advanced test generation rules. So you could have different templates with different questions for different work centers. If you wanted to have more specific questions for the work centers, so for example, maybe your painting station, you'd have more specific tests than perhaps a welding station. Then you could have different templates with those more specific questions in there. But you wouldn't need to necessarily change how you're approaching this. And then alternatively, you could also just have this, say, loop through all the work centers. This is just example code to get you started, but it is very minimal code to automatically create a test using a job queue. You can also leverage Power Automate if you prefer to use the trigger option.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more great content, and remember to hit that bell icon to stay updated. See you in the next video.